And the big problem that I want to solve today is how to mount this GPU. Hey, what's up? John Sherrod here, and welcome back for part 2 of my learnings of building a custom water-cooled PC. If you missed the first one, part 1, check it out here, where I talked about why I'm doing this project and I got into some of the parts I'm selecting. Now that I've tested the parts and I know they are working well, it's time to put everything into the case. So let's just catch up into what I did this week. Here's the case. I have the rads in here. Let me move the case close. I put all the parts together this week. The rads themselves, I swapped them. They had kind of the ports on this side, and the last person that used this ran tubing along to a front distro. I have the front distro. I decided not to use it because I found some pressure cracks in it. So I decided to pick up this side distro instead and see if that will work. But the reason I'd rather have the ports on this side so that I can just boop, pipe them kind of directly in. Same with the top one here. I can pipe them down here. They're short, quick runs versus having tubing all the way across. The other reason is that I'm using metal tubing, and the metal tubing comes pre-bent, the 90-degree pre-bends. I only have one bend unless I put a junction in. So if I were to come up here with some fittings, come across, I could have it bend here. I mean, I could, anyway, this is the fun stuff. I have decided to go this way. And then focus the piping from the CPU and the GPU. I may adjust this kind of up and down based on where it needs to go. It can slide a little bit, as well as the radiators can slide left and right a bit just to align with the holes. Once I get some fittings and tubings, I'll figure that out. Right now, it's more of the bigger picture. And the big problem that I want to solve today is how to mount this GPU. My dream is to have it somewhere right there, kind of front and center, so everyone can see it, so they can see that this is a really cool Kingpin card. It has the copper. I removed the old vertical GPU bracket because it actually didn't have a whole lot of customizability for height. It was pretty much stuck in one spot. So what I liked about the EK one, which I bought, it is right here. Okay, it has different kind of spots here that I can take out right there. Yeah, I already took the top one off, which I probably don't need to, but oh well. What that allows me to do is raise it up higher. The reason I wanted to raise it up higher is because I didn't know if I'd have enough room with the radiators and the fans. So yeah, let me put this in really quick and we can see where the GPU sits. Okay. That is the rough location of where it would be if it was vertical mounted. Now, I want to point out a couple things. One, it's pretty tight. I actually had it one before, was at 1 notch higher, and it was literally covering where the tubes were for the water block. So this gives me, in theory, room to go across and up and over to these two holes here in the distro. There's plenty of room here. I could go one lower. My thought is that there is a 4X PCI Express port there, that if you ever did want to put a Thunderbolt adapter, this board doesn't come with Thunderbolt. Because this is a video content creation board, you may want that. I was thinking about having it there, but I could go one lower if we remove that. I got it in like this and I said, okay, cool. I mean, it's a bit tight, the tubing. I mean, I can have the tubing coming out the front for the GPU and can come across. I can make that work. That is A-okay. It's a little tighter to the water block than I hoped, but then I thought to myself, well, John, you haven't put a hard drive in here yet. And now the NVMe slots are completely blocked. So okay, cool, no problem. I'll take the GPU, I'll put the card in, and then I paused and I said, well, if this is a video content creator system, a single 1 terabyte drive probably isn't enough. And once I get the tubing in and the water going, if I ever need to change it or add more, how do I get in there? I can't. So I said, okay, well that's okay. I've been waiting for an excuse to use one of these. This is an actual M.2 expansion card that I got with an Asus motherboard a while ago. And I thought to myself, okay, this would be perfect, especially because this is actually PCI Express 4, whereas the one that's on board is actually only 3. Now, the hard drive I have for this is PCI Express 3, but considering that you may only want that maybe for the OS, and that you want your storage, for video editing, all on this. With the card oriented in a GPU set, I can't put it anywhere. That slot in the bottom, it's just the 4X. This has been my week. I've been back and forth. Okay, well, I mean, my whole plan, my whole vision for this was to be able to see this card vertically mount. I literally spent $150 to buy this EK mount just so I could use it. Let's take it out of the GPU bracket. Let's orient it in a standard position and see how it looks. So, another suggestion that someone told me was that I should definitely put it in the first PCI Express slot because it is closest to the CPU and therefore connected to the CPU. I did not realize that some PCI Express ports are connected to the CPU and some are connected to the chipset. And when connected to the chipset, it's a bit slower. Now, thankfully, I confirmed with this board here that all 3 slots are PCI Express 16X slots, and they're all connected to the CPU. So you can connect them anywhere you want. So here's my thought. If I put the card in the absolute bottom slot, it'll definitely block this 4X PCI Express port. So if anyone ever wanted to put a Thunderbolt port in, that's not gonna work. This guy here might be the magic solution. I'm also trying to figure out where I fit this guy. So this guy could go here too, right? In the bottom slot. The question is, can I fit this guy? It's hitting. It's hitting. So that isn't going to work. Okay, so let's put him back. Ta-da. I think this is the best spot for it. And why I say that, a couple reasons. If I put it up in the top slot, I'm definitely blocking where the M.2, the 2 M.2 slots is. There is a third one here that sticks straight up, which I've never used, and it seems interesting. It's also, I'm told this one is controlled by the chipset, so it's a bit slower, where these two here are faster and connected to the CPU. So let's say I wanted to put my operating system or 1 or 2 M.2 hard drives there. I still have access to it. Depending how I have these fittings here on top, I could go below. I have room. Considering that I have to go to the 2 distro plates here, I'm probably gonna go up. Back, up and in, like this. 1, and then same with this guy up and over. Behind the screen, so you definitely still have access to the screen, but the tubing goes in behind. Doesn't obstruct anything with the water block. I can still get up and over here, not an issue. So, and then doesn't interfere with any of this. It also allows me to, the 4.x, the 4-speed PCI Express slot in the bottom is not being blocked. So I think for future-proofing this system and resellability of it, because I'm not keeping this system, right? I'm using it as an experience. I want to have some content, learn more about water cooling, and then I'm going to sell it. I want to give the next owner as much capabilities, even though they're locked into a custom water looping kind of setup, that if they do want to change things, they can. So access, they want to change the hard drive, no problem. The RAM, I still don't know. Maybe I'll make the tubes tall enough so they can get into the RAM. I'm still considering buying 4 more sticks and putting them in there. But yeah, they can grab a Thunderbolt and put it in the bottom. If they wanted to use an expansion card, they could put one in. That's where I'll have to get tricky with my tubing to make sure that my tubing doesn't block that first PCI Express slot in case, and maybe I'll put this on and install it in there before I do the tubing. That way I can make sure that, because I think I'm going to sell this with the card as a, hey, I know this board's older and it only has PCI Express 3 M.2 slots on board, which is, I wouldn't say old, but it's a couple years old. Everything is you know, definitely version 4, if not going version 5. So this card here grants full version 4, and with 4 slots, I think that would be great. If someone even wanted to use that as their OS drive, they absolutely could. Thoughts? Let me know what you're thinking. I would love to hear your perspective. If you've done this before, like I say, this is my first time. If I'm not thinking of something, if I have overthought something, I'm definitely super disappointed that I cannot do the vertical mount, because the front of this card is just so beautiful, but it will leave the focal point towards the copper water block over the CPU. You win some, you lose some. If this was my own system and I knew I wasn't using it, or it had Thunderbolt built into the motherboard, and then I could just go out from a Thunderbolt into a Thunderbolt NAS and have my storage on the NAS, then I wouldn't worry about it. But because I want to resell this and give the next owner comfort that this system will last them a long time, I think this is the more practical situation. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for watching as I go along with my journey. This is part 2. Next part, it will be getting all the tubes and the fittings and where I will fit them and whether I want to put an inline sensor and a flow sensor or not. And I'm looking, and I have not purchased yet, but the Aqua Shield, which I'm thinking about mounting right here. So that is episode number 3. Please stay tuned. Subscribe if you like this kind of content, and I will see you on the next one.